So what we have is this is Armenia here. The majority of the empty villages were in this section from here on down through along the north of Lake Savan and into this region. So what we end up with are people in this area who had to be weaving. These are the halls where the people were weaving. Now, when we look at this, why then weren't the rugs going to Yerevan? Well, it's rather obvious. The Russians, who now control this area, had a fairly unfriendly border with Persia. Persia is looking at the Russians thinking, any Russian who comes to the border is probably looking to steal more of our country. What do they want next? Tabriz. Did you know, did anybody in this room know that the Russians actually tried to take Tabriz after World War II? 1945, Harry Truman threatened to drop an A-bomb on Russia unless they pulled the troops out. You know, the average kid will never hear that in school today. But it was a constant effort by the Russians to seize as far down into Persian Azerbaijan as they possibly could. So really, trade was not going south. What was happening was up in this area is the town of Tiflis, or Tbilisi, which was the Russian administrative center for the Caucasus. That's where the Russians administered everything. That's where the Tsarist offices were. So if anything, these people, and look, you know, we see the snow-capped ridges, we see the high mountains, and we see the valleys. We have to ask ourselves, is it more logical to assume that they would go down over the mountains or north to the towns? Like up here, to the town of Kazakh. And what's Kazakh at? At the long end of the valley. People are going to take the rugs north and they're going to sell them in these market centers. My best argument for why the rugs had to go north is because this is what they would have had to go over had they gone south. I don't think they really wanted to haul rugs over. This is not practical. Obviously, you're going to hitch up the wagon and go on down the valley. That's basically the introduction. I want you to get the idea of where I'm going on this. I think it's germane to the discussion that we throw out the languages, the names of the languages, so that you can help to understand what I'm talking about. As we now look at the Caucasus and say, all right, is Shirvan a meaningful name for a group of rugs? Well, the Shirvan Khanate hasn't existed in over 100 years. Does it really mean anything to use that term today? And I would suggest that the Shirvan rugs are made by Azeri Turks. And the alternate names I thought were interesting. Their dialects that they speak are Kuba, Derbend, Baku, Shamaki, Salyan, Lenkaran, Kazakh, Aryam, Borchala, Terakim, Kizilbash, Nuka, Zakatala, Kabbalah, Yerevan, Nakhichevan, Ordubad, Ganja, and Shusha. And these are names that we recognize. Many of these names are names that we recognize from the carpet literature. So when we look at this, we can see clues as to a new nomenclature for the rugs. I suggest that we go by people names, by the types of people. Here we get into the southern Azeri, and this is where we get to most of our Persian rugs. So, you know, Tabriz, Afshari, Shah Savan, Mokaddam, Nafar, which is part of the Hamse, and on through. I mean, we just look down here and we can find a correlation between many of the names that we know from rugs and also the different languages. Lezgi, and I'm going to also propose that Lezgi rugs are the bulk of what we know as Kuba today. Forget Lezgi stars. Anybody can weave a Lezgi star. When I talk about Azeri rugs, Shirvan, I'm talking about primarily a white wool selvage, two-cord, wool-wrapped, later on cotton-wrapped side cords, flat back. I'm suggesting as the Lesky type, I'm suggesting frequently blue wefts, blue side cords, more depression. Tailish are a little bit of an oddball. The majority of people up here are more related to the Altaic language family, the Turkmen group, the Turkish group. The Tailish are actually part of the Indo-European Persian group. And the Armenians are, I'm not even going to try and read all of that, but it's basically many of the areas. Now,